Good evening, everyone. We're here for our Friday night discussion. Tonight we'll be talking with Eddie of Apopka and more on his story. I am Stell Bailey, the co-facilitator of the National PFAS Contamination Coalition. I'm also the executive director of Fight for Zero and a cancer survivor of a cancer cluster. And Jeff, who are you?
I am the vice president of Fight for Zero, and I work with Stell, and we work side by side in all of our community education and grant work, and trying to educate the public about what we're dealing with here in Florida.
And Eddie. So, hi, Eddie. You're from Apopka, and you run what site do you run? And
my name is Eddie Poirier, and I run the Facebook page Apopka Cancer Cases on Facebook. Started that 5 years ago, shortly after the death of my wife, Sheila, from cancer. And I started it because I wanted to try to find a way to reach out to the locals to see if I could find some information, because there was a lot of people on my street that had died from cancer and others that had cancer. And I was looking for some answers. And I started my Facebook page, and I think I have well over 5,000 people that follow the page. So It's very productive, and I've learned quite a bit in the last 5 years.
Wow. So I want to kind of go back to where this all began for you. I know that your wife got cancer. So let's take us back to then when your wife got cancer. What year was that?
I'm going to take you way back to the year 2006 when we lived in Orlando, and we moved from Orlando. My wife was pregnant, so she had been seeing doctors on a regular basis. She'd have her, her sonograms and all that stuff. So we knew what was going on with her as far as, health-wise. She became pregnant with our third child. We already had a couple, and it was certainly a late life pregnant. It was a surprise, big surprise. That she was 41 years old when she got pregnant. And we stayed at the other house, and then we bought this house in Apopka, and we ended up moving to Apopka, and Bailey was born. My youngest son, Bailey, who is now 14, he was born in that house. And we made a grave decision when we moved in there. We went from a house that we were paying $700 a month to a house we were paying $1,500 a month. And we decided that, it wasn't me. My wife decided that she wanted to try to save money. So she said, let's use the water. Let's use the fridge water. And it's funny because people, whenever anyone says to you, the water is bad up there, well, when I heard it bad, I was thinking, okay, well, maybe the water's hard. The water's hard. Most people don't understand what it means by the water's hard. It means it has solids in it. And when it has solids in it, what it means, it has all types of things in there that it's not supposed to be in there. So long and short of it, we started drinking out of the fridge. My wife drank water 24/7. The baby was born. She was healthy. She looked like $1 million. And she really and truly looked like $1 million. But she was as healthy as an ox. And she drank water 24/7. All the time. I drank a little bit of water, but she was drinking the water 24/7. So what that means, you'll hear some people say, well, Eddie, you, why me? Why her and not you? I said, well, if I'm drinking just a glass of water a day and Sheila was drinking 8 glasses a day, she's getting 8 times the amount of exposure to whatever's in that water that I'm getting.
That's definitely something that people do not think of, is that we all drink different amounts of water. And that's why our children are usually the most susceptible when there's contamination in our drinking water, because they're still growing. And like you said, there's so many different factors that play into environmental contamination. And another factor would be genetics. Genetics does play a small role in who gets cancer and who doesn't get cancer. Some people have much better immune systems and have the ability to fight off these exposures.
Well, there's a lot of truth to that. But, unfortunately for the city of Apopka, all the people on my street that died, all the ones that I can verify, they all died from cancers of the endocrine system. Pesticides are endocrine disruptors. My neighborhood is surrounded by nurseries. I'm not kidding you. North, south, east, they're everywhere. You can smell it in the air. The nurseries are everywhere. So now Sheila, let me just tell you. So now Bailey's born, and this is 2006. And then a couple of years later, Sheila, goes and gets checked. She finds she has a lump, and that was, and it sadly was my birthday. 2012. January 2nd, 2012 is when she was diagnosed. And that was the beginning of, it was sad because it was the beginning of treatment that never stopped. Sheila never got into remission, never got a chance to get into, she never got a chance to, what do they call it when you get?
Remission?
No, she didn't go into remission, but the other thing is she didn't get a chance to have her body redone, you know, and she had
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, reconstructive surgery.
and let me tell you, the worst thing for a woman who has cancer that loses their breast, that's a piece of them. My wife lost her breast, and she told me that after she lost her breast, she just didn't feel the same. She didn't feel like a woman anymore. And I think that, you know, everybody's trained to say the right things. Oh, God bless you. You're going to be fine. Don't worry. I know you're going to make it. Pull you. And then before you know it, they're dead. And it's just terrible, because what people really need to start looking at is forget the cure. How about why don't we take a look at the cause, and why don't we prevent the cancer? Because, you know, everybody has different beliefs about what they do believe and don't believe. But I know for a fact of this. My wife, Sheila, got sick. I know she got sick. I know she got sick in our neighborhood, and I know all my neighbors got sick. I know the kid who lived right next door to me, who drank nothing but water. He was 44 years old. Him and Sheila died within 5 months of each other. He had pancreatic cancer, and Sheila had breast cancer. But again, all these cancers that these people had were cancers of the endocrine system. And it's funny because what the Department of Health does, there's like 57 homes in my neighborhood.
Mhm.
If every single home had a different type of cancer, they'd say, oh, there's no problem here. This cancer is not tied together. And it's terrible, because the way that they look at these cancer clusters is BS. And
Mhm.
what they actually are doing is they're trying to find ways to not count a cancer cluster. I'll tell you what, if I looked at a neighborhood and half the homes in there had cancer, I'm not going in there.
Right.
And
Yes.
that's what I don't understand. But what I am finding out is that in Apopka, the water. Then I found out my backflow preventer. Now, this is where we need to talk about the backflow preventers and
Yeah.
what I think actually has happened. This is my backyard here, and the backyard flooded all the time. And if you live in an area, actually any area, if you have an irrigation system hooked up to the city water lines, you absolutely must have a backflow preventer. And in Apopka, they actually have a DEP mandated ordinance that says they absolutely must have their own ordinance in place to make sure that people who do have an irrigation system hooked up to the city water lines, they have to have a backflow inspector and a backflow preventer, and it must be inspected annually. I lived in my house from 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, until 2013, when I got my first notice from the city telling me that it was time for my periodic inspection. Not my annual inspection, but my periodic. And I thought that was fishy. And I said, why they say periodic? And it worked because they said periodic. I was like, well, maybe they do it every few years. It didn't click that this was something that was supposed to be done all the time. So when my wife ended up dying, and I went to meet with the Department of Health in the city of Apopka, I brought up a few things to them. I told them I was really concerned about the tap water. I told them it really smelled. There was all kinds of chlorine in it. I told them I was worried about all the neighborhood, all of the pesticides in the area, because all the runoff was going into my backyard. I told them my backflow preventer failed. They were very dismissive of it. The city of Apopka, their guy, I can't think of his name, but their water guy, he said, oh, well, it's almost impossible for that to happen. Let me explain something to everybody, and this is so very, very, very important. If you have an irrigation system and it's hooked up to the city water line, it's very important that you have to have a backflow preventer, and it must be working properly. A backflow preventer does exactly what it's called. It prevents water from flowing backwards. Now, here's the way it works. You must have sprinkler heads that are submerged underwater. Okay, that's the first part. You must have a backflow preventer that is not working properly, or if you have no backflow preventer at all, okay, then all you need is the last ingredient, the water drops, the water pressure. Once the water pressure drops and the pressure changes, now when it comes back on, it's able to create a siphon. And because the water pressure is all shifted, and the water pressure might be heavier from my line that's in my backyard, because you saw my backyard, it was flooded all the time. Mm-hmm. Long and short of it is, now once the pressure drops and then it reconnects, now what you've got is you've created the siphon. And now once the siphon is created, it's created and you can't stop it. So let me just tell you something, Jeff. Here's the way it works. Let's say Stell lives to my left and you live to my right and I live in the middle. Either one of you guys turn the water on, you're going to be drawing the water from my backyard, because once the water comes from back through the irrigation system and past the backflow preventer, now it goes into the city water line on your street. So everybody on your street is going to get some of that water. The people closest to me are going to get the heaviest doses, because that's where the contamination was. And so long and short is that we told these people in 2015, they blew me off. They said they were going to come out and do some testing. They did come out and do testing, but the things they tested for heavy metals. But you would think they would test for pesticides, especially considering it was endocrine disruptors that absolutely caused my wife's cancer. So it's almost like you heard that there was a gunfight, and yet they're not looking for bullets or anything. They're over there looking for knives. So they don't want to find the evidence. They don't want to find it. But now let me bring you up to today. Okay. So for the last 5 years, I've been working very, very hard, diligently, trying to find out what's been going on. I've been doing public record requests and putting in tons of them. But the city is really cute about the way they operate. They do not want to give stuff up. They'll give you every BS reason why they're not going to give it to you. Well, I've been looking and looking and looking and looking and looking. Well, finally, I was able to get my hands on a report where the city of Apopka fired a water supervisor for falsifying test results on backflow preventers. Now, I actually believe that this guy was railroaded, because this guy started working in 2015. And it's hard to believe that a brand new guy is going to come in and he's just going to start being rogue and he's going to do things his own way. So I really believe that what was going on in 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14, and then they hired this guy in 2015. We find out now they're still not DEP compliant. If you read the report that you were just showing there, the city of Apopka did not have a program in place to make sure that these backflow preventers were inspected and inspected in a timely manner. And if you talk to the city of Apopka, they're going to tell you that, well, we don't know how many homes are affected. We don't think it's a problem. Really, we got 12 people dead on my street, one street, and they don't think it's a problem. This is a citywide problem. This is just one street. Now, here's the deal. Nobody understands that how widespread this is, because there isn't an Eddie in every neighborhood. I knock on these people's doors because I'm from Boston. I know about the situation in Woburn, Massachusetts, that Erin Brockovich was involved with, the situation in Wilmington that she just was involved with. My sister lived in Wilmington. So when I started hearing about my neighbors getting cancer and stuff, I'm pretty sharp. I started thinking, hey, wait a minute, something's not right here. And I knocked on people's doors. My neighbors down the street, they care more about the value of their property than they do about the value of their life. So what they try to do is they try to discredit what I was saying. But I was knocking on the doors that people were telling me. I was going from door to door to door. And by the time I finally got through the whole neighborhood, I said, something's really, really wrong here. And then when you look at the situation with my wife and the kid next door, they drank water exclusively. And to me, it's like, it's pretty clear. They were the two of the healthiest people in both of our houses, and yet they were gone. It just made absolutely no sense. And when you look at it and when you add it up, it's the water.
So can I interrupt you first, Eddie? What can you explain to the people, when your wife got sick, what made you think, or at what point in time did you say, I wonder if it's the water. I wonder what's going on. What led you?
What was long before she died? Oh, this show. Long before she died. I had met with the city of Apopka in 2014 because I did not like the a little promotion. Florida Health had this promotion going on where they had patients who were cancer patients, and they were using them to promote them to market their cancer campaign. And I thought it was despicable. I thought it was inappropriate. So I went and sat down and met with those people, and I told them exactly what I thought of them. I said, you can't be using patients. And they said, oh, these patients, they volunteered. They really want to do it. But you know what's funny? And I told the doctor this. I says, all patients love their doctors because it's their only hope that they have. And I said to the doctor who was he worked with women. Anyways, make a long story short, I said to him, how many of your patients are participating in this campaign? He said, none. And I said, yeah, of course not, because they were full of it. They were full of it. But so back as far as 2014, I brought up to the former mayor, Joe Kilsham. I said, listen, Joe, what do you think here? And then I went and actually sat in his office with him, and I brought it up to him. And I think he ended up giving me a business card, and it had to do with the business card came from an engineering company, and they have, to do stuff with the ground, to do stuff with soil and groundwater. But what I never knew, and this is what really convinced me that it was the water, we reached out to a researcher at UCF, Commissioner Doug Bankson. He connected me with this researcher at UCF, and the researcher told me that with everything you're telling me, the contamination must be in your neighborhood. I said, well, how's it getting in the pipes? She said it gets in the pipes through feeder lines. I go, well, and I'm ignorant because I grew up in an apartment. I didn't know any of this stuff. I didn't have my own house. So I'm asking all these questions. So I said, what's a feeder line? And then she explained to me, any line that comes off the main line on your street. So you have a main line that comes on the road, and then you have side lines that go down to each street. So any line that goes off the line on your street would be a feeder line.
So water main breaks. If there's a common water main break.
Yes, but what I was thinking was the backflow. Right. Because they are hooked up to those things, and any of those things could actually leak. So I brought that back to the city in 2016. So it's hard for me to understand why we brought this up. They knew my backflow preventer had failed at the time. How could they not look into this in 2015, 2016, 2017? And then we had a new mayor elected, Brian Nelson, and I campaigned for Brian. Brian was very helpful in the beginning. He'd come out, he tested my water for me, and we found some stuff that basically proved there was a lot of contamination in the groundwater there. Well, once Mr. Nelson became mayor, he shifted gears, and he really wasn't quite as helpful with me as I thought he would be. Started trying to send me down rabbit holes. We knew it was the water. He called me up one day. He goes, hey, Eddie, he goes, thinking maybe, could be building supplies that might be causing that problem in your house. So I said, Brian, can I ask you a question? And I'm pissed at this point. I said, did an expert call you up and give this to you? You go, no, I'm just thinking. I go, okay, Brian, do me a favor. Don't bring anything to me unless an expert brings it to you. I had trusted what the city was telling me. I had trusted what Mr. Nelson, the mayor, was telling me, until they started telling me stuff that didn't make sense. So I was looking for because originally, first of all, the problem in Florida, they're building homes where they should not be building them. They're building them on top of orange groves. They absolutely should not.
On top of military dumps.
They absolutely. And that's the problem. And they don't seem to understand. So if you're going to build on these cesspools, you need to make sure that you follow all the other little rules that you have in place. The reason why they have a backflow preventer ordinance is because most municipalities consider the backflow preventer to be such a liability to their town that if you don't get it inspected or it fails inspection, they'll shut your water off. Not in Apopka. Not in Apopka. They don't test it. They don't come out to your house. They have no idea what's going on. They have no clue. like I said, I lived in that neighborhood from 2006 to 2013. My water, it was supposed to be inspected every single year. And Jeff, let me tell you this, and this is what's really important. If 10 people live on one street and everybody that lives on the street does exactly what they're supposed to do, but one person, just one, does not have their backflow preventer working properly and it fails, that one, just that one home can contaminate the whole neighborhood. And that's scary because everybody else is doing what they're supposed to do. So they're thinking, I'm protected. No, you're not. What you've done is you're protecting everybody's water line by making sure the backflow doesn't get in. But we're all at everybody else's mercy. And that's why it's so important for these municipalities to make sure that they follow these rules and these guidelines. And it's obvious to me. I mean, honest to God, look, 2006 to 2020, when they just fired the guy, and it says in there that in the report that that they knew they were not DEP compliant, and yet they charge all this money for the water. And the first things out of all their mouths, and I know you've heard it, Stel, and I know you've heard it. Oh, well, our water meets all DEP standards. Well, you know what? I guess it doesn't, does it? And they charge all that money to me. And I know you can't go after them and say they committed fraud, but didn't they commit fraud by telling us that the water met all DEP standards when it didn't?
And then additionally, on top of that, they don't tell people that there's unregulated chemicals such as PFAS that they don't test for in drinking water because they're not required. So legislators will make the laws in Tallahassee, and you've got these standards. There's no safety standards set for the state of Florida, so they don't have to go off of any safety level. So that's an additional thing on top of these backflow preventers, on top of poor infrastructure and groundwater getting into drinking water. And that's one of the biggest things that people don't realize too, is that our groundwater can find its way into our drinking water, and our groundwater throughout Florida is contaminated. You look at the East Coast, we know we have contamination in ours because we've tested it. I'm sure there's pesticide contamination in your groundwater. And then recently we have Piney Point on the west coast of Florida, and they're worried about radium and uranium and other contaminants and it potentially getting into their drinking water.
Well, we know it's just a matter of time until it gets into, because they've released the contaminated water. But I still want to back Eddie up, because for the people watching, I want you to explain. You're living your life with your wife. You're everything's going as should, but suddenly your wife is ill, and you're noticing, is it the same time all of your neighbors are getting ill, or is it within a decade of time, or is it within just like a few? Explain.
The neighborhood was built in 2000. They started building homes there in 2004. I was aware of people getting sick in 2008, 2009.
Because again, it's an environmental cancer. So it takes time for it to build up, according to, as you explained,
according
to bioaccumulation.
Yeah, and by the way, you're always going to see these people try to be dismissive, even the Department of Health. My wife had HER2 positive breast cancer. Sheila was born with the HER gene. But the HER gene never turns into cancer unless it is activated by an endocrine disruptor. So when you talk to the Department of Health, they want to BS you and say, oh, well, it's hereditary. It is not hereditary. The gene itself is hereditary, but you don't ever get the cancer unless that you get exposed to it. So it's them. They like to play word games.
Right. And there's a lot of discrepancies that we've been finding with the Department of Health. We've had a biostatistician write a letter to the Department of Health due to the Bayshore cancer cases. And we've actually taken all of the cases across the state of Florida throughout the past, 6 decades, Jeff. And we've been comparing them all, and there's no consistency in how they do any of these cancer cluster investigations. And then, of course,
what we found that's definite is they don't want a cancer cluster, so they take the information differently. So from Apopka, we'll change to Brevard County, to Orange County, and the way they collect the information is done in such a way that you can't find a cluster.
Yeah, but you know what I find interesting is that, and these people are so shady, but you know David Overfield. You know who he is, right? I worked with David Overfield. David Overfield is the guy who works with the Department of Health. David was a part of all the stuff. David was a part of the meetings. He knew all about my backflow preventer. When I sent him the report about Curtis Johnson being fired and this in the city not being DEP compliant, David Overfield has gone radio silent. I have not heard back from him. And what I'm in the process of doing right now, I am going to collect a bunch of information concerning people that lived on my street in the inspections that were supposed to be done. I'm going to throw it in an Excel sheet, and then I'm going to contact the Department of Environmental Protection, and then I'm going to discuss with them dates and times, and I'm going to ask them, where were you people when this was going on? Where were you when this was going on? And I'm going to ask for documentation, and I'm going to look the stuff to see if people were or were not doing their job. It's just terrible because we all take things. I'm 61 years old, and when I was young, we could drink almost water anywhere. But water's changing, and it's really different. And these municipalities, they understand how dangerous it is, especially in a town like Apopka. It is the nursery capital of the world. They have all the orange grove and stuff there. And then, of course, the mayor, he's a former nursery owner. He knows the dangers of pesticides. And it's just very, very frustrating that these people, they just choose to deny. And but Jeff, you asked, and I know I keep going everywhere else when you're trying to.
There's a lot to talk about.
There's so much I could talk. We could go for hours.
Right.
But what happened was I learned about one more person. And every time I found out about somebody else, it made me a little sicker to my stomach because I started to realize, because now I was finding out that, because you really don't want to find out you're living in Death Valley. You don't want to find out you live on 3 Mile Island,
Right.
you know? But then as you find this stuff out, it's like, oh my God. And then you start to realize this is a problem. You know, it's funny. I've heard from so many people talked about a firefighter. I'm not sure of his name, but his name was Armando. And they have a benefit for him every year, the city of Apopka, because he was this great firefighter who died from cancer. You know what everybody remembers about him? Walked around with a gallon of water in his hand all the time. City tap water that he was drinking all the time because he used to cut lawns.
And we know firefighters are high risk for cancer because of working around the firefighting foams and the chemicals that they use. So that, in addition to poisoned water, will bioaccumulate very quickly.
You know, what a lot of people don't realize, and I didn't realize it until I became a water expert, is whenever you see contamination, you're talking about in Wilmington, Mass, in Woburn, Massachusetts, in Apopka, Florida, the contamination's in the ground. Well, if it doesn't get in your drinking water, you're fine. The problem is it doesn't matter where you live. This stuff is getting into people's drinking water. And even though the situation on my street is greatly exaggerated, I believe there was 3 or 4 people whose backflow preventer failed. That's what I really and truly believe. But I think what's happening all around the country, and I think people, no matter where they are, I hope they're paying attention to this, and I hope they'll share this information. It's very important that if you have a irrigation system hooked up in your backyard, you need to make sure that you have a backflow preventer, because if you don't, you may very well end up drinking some of that crap that's in your backyard. And most people just do not understand it. They don't know. And I didn't understand it until.
And you and I have talked in your neighborhood, particularly there was a retention pond as well. I mean, there's lots of factors that come into play. And lots of neighborhoods in Florida have these retention ponds. And if you're getting that runoff from people using lawn fertilizer and the irrigation systems, and you know how your backyard would flood, and it's all collected. And what do some people do in those retention ponds? They use them for recreation. They fish out of them. And that water that's there, those ponds often are not lined, so it becomes part of your groundwater, which then all of that is collected into your drinking water as well. So when people are driving around saying, oh, how pretty, there's a fountain in that pond, chemicals are being blown into the water. And if you're living right next to that, you're inhaling it. You're not just drinking it. Yeah. It could be coming in contact with your skin. You're breathing it in. So there's a variety of causes that, you and I have discussed in the past that come into play here that people just aren't aware of. So Stella, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask Eddie another question.
You can ask a million questions. I'm
Once
good.
again, I just want to acknowledge the people that are watching right now. Please feel free to put your questions in the comments for Eddie. Eddie is we're talking about Apopka cancer cases tonight. And if you have any questions for him, and that goes for my TikTok followers that are online, I have a couple questions. So once you're done with yours, Jeff, I'll go ahead and start.
Yeah, briefly, so you've discovered your wife. It was a water issue. You started dealing with a lot of public officials, elected and appointed officials. I know we could talk about this for literally days, and we've compared notes and we know how it operates down here. But can you briefly as you can, describe your experience and what that's been like, just trying to get just general information from anybody to try to find out what's going on. What has that experience been like?
I'm going to give you the short version. I'm a very trusting person. If the devil come up and knocked on the door tonight, and I'm a believer, I believe people. I believe the city of Apopka and the Department of Health, I believe that they share the same concerns I share, but I have found out through their actions and the way they operate that they really don't care. And you can't get public records from them. They make it very, very difficult. If it's something they don't want to give to you, they will drag their feet. They make it very hard, and it ends up, unfortunately, being somewhat combative. I'm combating right now with the city of attorney in Apopka, and the reason being is that he's denying a public record that I know for a fact exists, and he's denying it. And what he doesn't understand is he sees this guy over here who's being a troublemaker and trying to cause crap in the city of Apopka. That's not true at all. I'm a guy, Eddie Poirier, who lost his wife to cancer, who's been fighting for answers. And I've been fighting and battling and fighting. And I'm just continuing to look for answers. And it's sad because the city attorney, he doesn't know who I am. He doesn't know who my wife is. He doesn't know what the life we had or anything. He's just over there doing a job. And you know what? I don't have a problem. And that was my wife just after the baby was born. Look at her. She looked like $1 million. She looked like an absolute $1 million. My God. But the attorney, he doesn't know who I am. He doesn't know anything about me. He doesn't know the pain that I've gone through. And so you know what? I'm not an attorney. Okay. I'm not an attorney. I just play one on Facebook, but I'm not an attorney, but he is. So play by the rules. Don't be twisting things. Don't be, you can be a good politician. You can be a good attorney. Okay. And avoid telling a lie. Okay. There's ways of doing that, and sometimes these people just don't get it. I mean, there's ways of, and what I'm trying to say is that I want the guy to tell me the truth and be straight with me, but God Almighty, don't lie. There's no need to lie. You know what I mean? There's other ways to do things. So I believe I've been misled by these people. I believe that they will do anything possible. Now, Jeff, it's funny you say that. What have I encountered? Let me tell you what I have encountered. These people have gotten so dirty that they attacked me on Facebook. They put out my credit report. They had the balls to put out a report on me and my wife. It was a domestic violence complaint. She threw me out of the house one stinking night. We were married for 30 years. We had another baby and we stayed together all this time. We had a fantastic marriage, and we had a marriage just like everybody else. We get aggravated with each other every now and then. That's just the way things go. But you know what? We had a great marriage. And for these people to do something so horrible as that, I mean, what kind of a person is going to attack a man who lost his wife to cancer, who was left with an 8-year-old boy? Okay. I'm just looking for answers. Is there something wrong with that? That one person had the nerve to say that I was trying to extort the city. Well, let me just ask you this. If you're walking across the street, Jeff, and you get hit by a runaway truck and you get killed, would you not expect your wife to go and reach out to those people and say, listen, you killed my husband, you're liable for that? Well, the city of Apopka killed my wife and 11 other people on my street. The water was not DEP compliant and never has been. And you want to know why I'm still here searching for answers? You know why? Because I want to hold somebody accountable. I want these people to accept responsibility, and then they need to take some type of corrective action. I am still to this day reaching out to the commissioners. I've emailed the commissioners and I've told them the only way you can fix this problem, we can't fix yesterday. We can't bring my wife back. We can't bring any of the dead back. But if they had taken corrective action in 2015, a lot of people may not have gotten sick. But here we are in 2021. What they need to do, they need to go to every single house in Apopka. They need to make sure that every house that has an irrigation system hooked up to the city tap water lines has a backflow preventer hooked up that's working properly. And then they need to put a program together that says, all right, we're going to be back in 1 year to make sure this thing is working properly. They don't even have a damn program put together. And again, it's beyond me because they were DEP mandated back in the early 2000s that they had to have this ordinance in place. What good are the ordinances if they're not going to enforce them? So the city of Apopka, they're going to have a lot of explaining to do because I don't know what they can tell anybody to justify why they did not do their jobs.
Eddie, so I have pulled up here on the screen. It says these documents were provided by Mr. Johnson. He instructed his staff not to perform the required test. The investigation, I guess there was an investigation into this, also revealed that he or both people routinely destroyed the forms documenting this.
Yeah, let me just tell you, this is kind of twofold what's happened here. The investigation of Curtis Johnson was done. I don't know what preceded that or what caused him to do that investigation, but as part of the investigation, the backflow inspections that they were going out and physically doing themselves, those were the ones that they were falsifying. And they weren't keeping any records on it, and they were destroying the records. They weren't maintaining the records. Now, those are the ones where maybe they have to go out and maybe they have to switch out a backflow preventer, or maybe they got a complaint or whatever. But the way the city of Apopka is set up, the homeowner or the homeowner, whoever lives there, is responsible to get that inspected. But the city's responsible to make sure that everybody does it. It's their job. And again, I moved in there. I had no idea that I had backflow preventer and it needed to be inspected. I had no clue. The city's job. That's why they send warning letters out. Unfortunately, they were 7 years too late for me. That's the problem. Yeah. 7 years too late. You know.
So one of the questions somebody was asking is, wouldn't you be able to tell if there was backflow in your drinking water, if it's backflowing? They're wondering if it would be murky or dirty. They're thinking groundwater. They saw your backyard. I think they're thinking, dirt being mixed in with it.
It really doesn't work like that. Basically, the way it works is that whatever's in the backyard gets sucked into the main line. But kind of look at it like this. Go fill up your bathtub and just take a small thing of sand and pour it in there. It's just going to blend in. You're not going to see it, And I think what's happening is with the stuff that's going in there, it's mixing in with, I don't know, with millions and millions of gallons of water. But the problem is pesticides is such a terrible chemical for the body that it doesn't take much of that stuff to affect your body. But to answer the question, no, you don't see it. It's something you would not be able to see.
Yeah, like similarly to certain contaminants that we deal with when we test for contaminants in drinking water, the hardest part when we're trying to educate people is the fact that you can't see these chemicals, especially these dangerous chemicals. It's like lead, it's a perfect example is lead in Flint, Michigan. I mean, you can't physically see these chemicals that you're drinking that are dangerous for your health. And so I think people need to keep that in mind. It's not like they typically get really upset when brown starts coming out, and they rightfully should be, when they see brown coming out of that faucet, or they see green, or they have to really see it for it to resonate with them. And so I think.
But in these examples, we're talking about molecules and particles.
It's not all harmful.
Right. It's just naked. You can't see it with the naked eye unless you put it under a microscope and zoomed in. All these harmful chains and chemicals that you would see something And then you have to determine, what is it from? Is it from pesticides? Is it from firefighting foam? Is it, so it's not something that's readily available to the naked eye.
And one thing that I'm sure you know this better than I do, but they haven't updated the list of chemicals that they test for in this country in like years and years and years and years. In Florida, dildrin is a chemical that was used for to kill termites. Very, very popular around all the golf courses. Most of the municipalities do not test for dildrin. Are you kidding me? You don't test for dildrin? This is what I don't understand. I just don't understand. And another thing that I had suggested this to the current Mayor Brian Nelson. I had suggested to him that, you do your testing where the water plant is, but then you get the water traveling through all these things. Well, if it's getting contaminated in the neighborhood, why don't we test the water in the neighborhood? Wouldn't that make sense? No, they wouldn't want nothing to do with that. That made too much sense. That made way too much sense for them,
Yeah, they don't. They'll test it coming out of the plant or in the plant. But like you said, people also don't think it has to travel through those pipes to get to your home. And so with our poor infrastructure, what could it potentially be picking up on the way to your home?
I think that people who live in Apopka who have the ability to do this, it's in very simple terms. You have to believe that if you've lived in Apopka any time between 2006 to 2021, which is right now, you have to believe that there's a very good chance you might have been exposed to some type of contaminated groundwater because the city was not enforcing their backflow preventer policy and ordinance. And if I'm somebody who lived there, and I should do it myself, but people, if they can't, they should go out and get a blood test done and see if they can see what's in their blood. My wife Sheila, she went to Florida Health at the end for her treatment, and Sheila participated in their in a program for experiments and stuff. So they have some of Sheila's tissue and some of Sheila's blood. So if we go to the point one day where we found XYZ, we could go back and we could test that. And I really think that the people who live in Apopka, and I'm not saying that people all over the country should do this, but we know for a fact since 2006 that Apopka has not been DEP compliant concerning their backflow preventers. And again, what does that mean? It just means that they did not make sure that the people who lived in the town that had irrigation systems had backflow preventers hooked up. And because of that, the city could not really guarantee that their water was DEP compliant because it did not, in fact, meet DEP standards for all these years. So if I live in Apopka now, and I don't, and I'm glad I don't live there anymore, I really want to know. I'm going to be very, very concerned because all the people that I know that have gotten cancer, the one common denominator, big water drinkers, big water drinkers, big water drinkers. And let me just say one more thing. It's an illusion. These refrigerator filters, they might take some of the chlorine out. They are not going to protect anybody from getting sick. I know
they're not built to remove pesticides. They're not built to remove PFAS. They're not. Those filters aren't for that purpose.
Right. The fridge ones. The fridge.
Correct.
Yeah. But they do make some really, really good ones that will take almost everything out. And I never realized the world we live in, that we really need to have, everybody needs to have one of those at their house.
Well, I think a common misconception is that the water departments or the utility departments, I think, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, but I think, Stella, and you were just recently toured one, they only test for less than 100, I believe, out of a possible 10,000 things that could be in your water. They're only legally responsible to test for.
Do you know how often they test?
Twice a year, I believe. And it depends where you live.
Sometimes some of these once every 2 years.
Right. And there's the safe, the Water Quality Act, which really means nothing because
You know what that's like? They got to test it once every 2 years. That's like, all right, let me go to the house and make sure the house is okay. Well, all right, nothing's going on. I'm going to come back in 2 years. And when you come back in 2 years, that's supposed to be an indication that everything's been okay. That's crazy.
So
I
Eddie,
mean,
if I was an Apopka resident and I'm hearing your story, what would you tell you? I heard you say, go get your blood tested, talk to your doctor. What else could you?
Yeah, there's somebody asking, how do I test my water?
Yeah.
well, that's really easy. What you could do, there is a company, and I do trust them. They're called Flowers Lab. They're in Altamont. You could contact them and let them know what you want to test for, and they will tell you exactly how to go about testing the water. But it's important. Everybody gets these water tests from the municipalities. All that is a snapshot of one day in time of what was going on at one particular water plant. And again, what have we been talking about for the last 45 minutes? It's contamination in the neighborhood. It's what's going on in the neighborhood. So if you look around and you see orange groves over here and you see nurseries over here and you see this big old plant over here and they got some really nasty smelling stuff coming out of there and you notice stuff's dripping all the time, you got to be really careful of the environment you're in. And you're in, again, we all take the water for granted. But I think if anybody has any health concerns, if anybody has had anything going on, I think that they might want to take a talk to their doctor about it. Let them know that that we recently found out that the water in Apopka did not meet DEP standards, and we possibly could have been exposed to in drinking and consuming contaminated water, which, and again, Apopka is going to be pesticides.
What would you tell the people to civically do? Is there anything that you've learned through your civic engagement with the mayor or with the city commissioners? How would you encourage them to be active more with that to get more attention to help resolve these issues?
Well, let me tell you the problem with Florida government. Apopka is a small town, and
do your best.
The city commissioners carry zero weight when it comes to running the day-to-day operations. The problem that's going on in the Apopka is about day-to-day operations. It's about the water department not running efficiently. It's about them not doing the testing and all that stuff. So you might have commissioners that are supportive and they know what's going on and they want to look into it. But then you got a mayor over here who all of his big donors, they're the donors from the nurseries and everything. And, he wants the tax dollars to keep coming in. The last thing he wants his town to be labeled as Kansas City. So what do? They want to label me as a nut job and say, oh, he's crazy. I don't know what he's talking about. I'm crazy as a fox. I told these people 5 years ago there was a problem with the backflow preventers. And if they at least had taken corrective action back then, something could have been done. So what do they need to do? They need to reach out to the mayor's office and they need to tell the mayor, Mr. Nelson, why did this happen? Why did you not take corrective action when you come in 2018? What are we doing now to fix this problem? Because I made it clear. I sent emails to the commissioners and I told them anything short of going to every single home and inspecting it, making sure the backflow preventer is working properly, and then putting a program in place that follows up to make sure within the next year you follow up and make sure it's done. This stuff isn't hard to do.
So is it safe to say that you've documented this and they can't claim ignorance, that they're not aware, that there's not a concern? I mean, they can go back and say, contact Eddie on his page and say, Eddie's got this documented, and I can show you that this was brought to your attention in 2018, and you guys have done nothing.
Jeff, I have emails that I sent to the Department of Health in 2015. I have emails that I sent to the mayor in 2015. I have text messages and emails I've sent to the current mayor, Brian Nelson. When I asked him in 2018, a few weeks before he became mayor, I said to him, Brian, what do they do in the county? He says, oh, in the county, we inspect everybody's. He goes, I don't know what they do in the city. Well, he should have found out when he got in there and figured it out. Well, he knows now they're not doing anything. And that's the problem with the city. And I got to tell you, I honestly think that they're liable. It's beyond me how they have not at least told the people. They should at least tell the people. Why don't you just tell the people the truth? Listen, we screwed up. Until we can ensure that every single home in Apopka that is supposed to have a backflow preventer hooked up does, until then, we want you people to play it safe and be careful. And you might want to think twice before you drink any tap water until we get the situation under control. I'm the only one that's warning these people. Nobody else is warning them. Nobody. And that's really, really troubling because, again, I'm going to say it. If they had taken corrective action in 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, or even 20, that means less people would have been exposed to whatever they've been exposed to. And you got to believe they've been exposed to it because the DEP is not going to mandate that you have an ordinance on the book if it's not a problem. And guess what? The city of Apopka is not going to fire a water supervisor, okay, unless it was a problem. It's a major problem. It's a major liability to them, and they want to blow it off like it's nothing. Listen, they collect our money. They take all our money from us, and they say, "Oh, you got to pay. You got to do this now." Well, you know what? Fine. You screwed up. You gave us water that was not DEP compliant. So I think that you people need to, at the very least, fix that problem. Can you at least fix that problem? And then maybe go back and take a look at how this happened and how do you prevent something like this from ever happening again. But everybody in Apopka, anybody who votes, there's going to be an election next year. There's going to be an election for a new mayor, and you all people need to decide. Do you think this mayor is doing things, the right way, really trying to get to the bottom of things? It's frustrating for me. You asked some of the things that I've done that I tried to work with the people. I had given the mayor 3 samples, bottles of water from three different people's houses. He left it in his car for 3 weeks and they threw it away and replaced it. That's fine, but they didn't even tell me they replaced it until I confronted them with the date on it. And then
wait. You're telling me you collected water samples from the homes in your neighborhood, turned them over to the mayor for testing. He threw those away.
He left them in his car for 3 weeks, and then the water supervisor told him he couldn't use them because they were in his car too long.
So what water did he replace that with? Was it from the neighbors again, or?
They claimed they went back to those people's houses. That's what they claimed, but I don't know. There's no proof of it. And then they did more water testing, Jeff. And when I asked, they did some testing. They did it in the neighborhood. I was told that a private citizen wanted this testing done, and that the city went out and did the testing for this person. And the mayor called me up and he said, all the tests come back good, everything's clean. But then I asked for the public records on it, and they didn't want to give them to me.
So if everything's good,
they claimed that the city was not there. They said that if the mayor paid for it with his own money, he would be the custodian of records. So anyways, to make a long story short, they said they didn't pay for it. They said there was not city staff out there. Come to find out, there was city staff out there, and they did pay for it. So what the mayor was trying to do, for some reason, he was trying to hide that water report. And let me just say this, Jeff, and this is very, very important. His testing, and it was the first time that they had done any testing in the groundwater since I had gone to them in 2015. So his testing that he did in 2019, he claimed he didn't find any pesticides in the testing they did. But when I spoke to the Department of Health director, he told me the reason why he never tested for pesticides in the groundwater in my neighborhood, because he knew he would find them. So you got the Department of Health director telling you we never test because we knew we'd find them. And then you got the mayor who does the shady testing. So, well, we didn't find any pesticides there. Let me tell you, this guy could probably go out to Daytona Beach and test the water there for salt and tell you he couldn't find any salt in the water either. If we want to get a test and we want to find the results we want, you control it. You control it all. So I don't trust anything the city of Apopka has told me. So what I would like the residents to do, if they're concerned, ask them why this happened, ask them what type of corrective action they're taking, and ask them how they plan on compensating the victims who might have gotten sick or might have had something happen to them. Maybe they should take a look at that. How about the people that paid these $100 and $200 water bills every month, who thought that they were getting, and they were told, and you hear them all the time because you've been at the meetings, well, our water meets all DEP standards. You've heard them. It's a song they just keep saying. Well, if you want to keep saying that song, then you can hang your hat on it, right? Hang your hat on it. So I think that they have a lot of problem. I think that people need to speak out. And I think they need to take a look at who's running the town. And you need to ask yourself, how could this happen in this town in this day and age? How does the mayor come in and who knew all about my situation, knew all about the cancer, knew that I was concerned about these backflow preventers, knew I was concerned about the developers and all that. He knew all this stuff. And then he becomes mayor and he forgets about all that stuff. You would think that he definitely would have looked into this, because again, this wasn't the current mayor's fault. He didn't create this. This happened before him. You know what I'm saying? So why don't you just be a hero? Clean up the problem, do the right thing, because I said before, I can't bring my wife back. I can't bring any of these people back. But if I've been able to save one person's life, I've done something good. If I've been able to get people to change their habits from what they used to do and at least make them more aware, then I've accomplished something. A couple of weeks ago, I handed out bottles of water at Publix, and people are funny. You know, if you're asking for something, they don't want to talk to you, but when you're giving them something, they will engage with you. And it was so nice to engage with the people. And I heard from so many people, and they were talking about the water, and they do notice and they do care. I just think we need to care a little bit more. And unfortunately, most of us, we don't really worry about this stuff until it affects us. In your case, Stel, you know, you had five family members that had gotten sick. You know, in my case, I really didn't until it hit my wife. I mean, I was aware of cancer, but until it hit me, I really didn't dig into it and, you know, find out all this stuff, you know. And I don't know how you get into it, Jeff. How did you come to where we are?
Oh.
Go ahead, Stel.
Jeff's
I'm
story.
not telling that. I'm
Go ahead
not.
and tell him, Stel.
No, I don't know how Jeff got into this. I have no idea. He just kind of came along.
Is there a story? Is this a story for another night?
This is the story. I mean, I was knocking on doors like you were saying, and I was like,
Stel was a person knocking on doors in the community, and I had just moved to Satellite Beach within a few months, and she said, "Are you aware? And did you know?" And I had just moved here with 5 kids, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" and so I like you went to the city and said, "Hey, you're our leaders. Can you lead us through this? Tell us what you're going to do." And shortly then and after, I got 11-page death threat packet mailed to my house.
That's horrible.
Asking for help,
for another night.
which is a whole other story. Correct.
You know what if the best advice that I can give people, and I know you guys would probably give the same advice. I know you all don't trust the politicians over in the areas where these cancer clusters are in your part of the world. And I know I don't trust the politicians in Apopka, the people that run the town and the way they do things, and they're the ones that are supposed to make sure everything's regulated a certain way. So if you cannot trust your municipality, you should not live there. People should not consider moving over to Cape Canaveral. They should not consider moving to Apopka. I've had a lot of people tell me, you know what, we're looking for a place, but we crossed Apopka off the list. Well, you know what, I don't want them to cross Apopka off the list, but I do want them to do what's best for their family. And to me, it's like, if you know that over here, near this place over here, there's been a real lot of cancer cases, and we think there might be an issue, why in the world would a family who has young kids want to go over there and do that, you know?
Well, that's why it's so important for what you've been doing, and you've been educating your community, even though you don't live there anymore. You are making a difference, and you make people aware of what the city's failing to do. So tell the people that are listening now, how do they find you? Where can they get more information about you and what you've done and what you do know?
Let me say this. I care about people a real lot, and I know what it's like to be in a situation where you're fighting for somebody's life and you're doing things for them. I'm an expert. I'm an expert on the treatment. I have lots of different things and knowledge, lots of things. I think it's very difficult when these patients end up first going into this. They don't have any idea what they're getting into when they're blind. Those people are more than welcome to reach out to me. They can email me, they can text me, they can post something on my page, they can send me a private message. I like to talk to people. I'd like to educate them. I'll give them 5 minutes, I'll give them an hour. Knowledge is powerful, and most of us just don't know enough about things. But I want people to know this. I don't want them to be afraid to ask. I don't want them to be afraid to reach out. It's very important. Don't be afraid to question your doctors. Don't be afraid to question your local politicians. Don't. And as far as the politicians go, those people are being paid really good money for what they're doing. You know, the mayor of Apopka is making $100-something thousand a year. Ring his phone up. Call him on the phone. Ask him what the hell's going on over there. Ask him, you know what you need to ask him? Ask him why they fired a low-level supervisor, okay, for falsifying these test results, but yet the DPW director wasn't fired. The city administrator wasn't fired. The other water manager wasn't fired. So they need to hold people accountable. I mean, there's a reason why they have these rules. There's a reason why they have these regulations. And what good are they if you're not going to follow them? And you've heard the old saying. I don't know. Heard my buddy Bill Belichick, who I can't stomach, the Patriots coach, and goes, "No, nobody died." Well, you know what? Somebody did die. 12 people died on my street. My wife died. So why am I here? I'm here because I'm not going to let my wife die in vain. I'm here because my poor son Bailey didn't have the luxury of having his mom to take care of him growing up. It's very difficult to be a single dad. I get up every day and I live for my kid. If it wasn't for him, I really don't know where I'd be. As a man, you always want to protect your spouse and you want to protect your children. And when my wife died, I felt like I didn't protect her. And so I have taken what's happened to me and our tragedy, and I'm just trying to share my information with other people so I can help them make good decisions and at least say no. Because if someone had told me before we moved into our neighborhood that, listen, there's people in there that are dying, you might want to think twice, I wouldn't have gone there. If someone had said, listen, you can't drink the water, but it's a nice neighborhood, I wouldn't have drank the water. So I'm warning these people, and when you look and you see that it's the people that are drinking all the water that are getting sick. The people that aren't drinking much water, but the ones that are drinking lots and lots of water, well, look at the common denominator. But the politicians, they need to be held accountable. Don't buy their bullshit when they tell you that, everything's fine. Something's wrong. When if you walk by a house and there's smoke coming out of it, there's a good chance the building's on fire. And people just need to use some common sense. When you have this in Apopka, I know of 4 or 5 different streets that have 5 or 6 people that have died on them. And it's like, well, why? It just doesn't make sense. And a lot of these people that are dying, they're young people. They're young people. What I found on my street, my side of the street where I lived, where the gully was, it's where all the runoff was. That's where a lot of the people were getting sick, or down along the right side, down to the back where the retention pond was. But I'll go to my grave believing it without a doubt was these backflow preventers. And it just, what it comes down to is that the town you live in, they need to make sure that they do their job. They need to make sure that they follow the rules. And if they don't, they need to be held accountable. And there are governing agencies that will do something to them. But let me tell you, the DEP used to be an agency that was an enforcement agency. They're not an enforcement agency anymore. You know what they turned into? They turned into helpers. We're helpers now. We're going to help them do what they're supposed to do. Well, you know what? If they're not doing the DEP mandate, you need to nail these people. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in our government because they don't care. They figure it's not their money and they don't care. And they're just in there, just doing whatever they do, and they just don't care. And it's easier for them not to tell anybody what's going on. It's easier for them to just deny. And the thing about water, which is a shame, if you get bad water and you get dysentery or whatever, you get real bad upset stomach. Well, you've gotten bad water, and you got it because of the water. But when you drink water that causes cancer, it's so hard to prove. It takes a real long time. But when you got, my wife, she was healthy as an ox. We moved in there just a couple of years later. She's got breast cancer. She dies. And that's the thing about my neighborhood. You just don't get cancer. You die. So I just hope that people will reach out to the city of Apopka. I hope they will reach out to their commissioners. I hope they will make some noise. I hope they get on social media. And I hope they start bitching, because if there's one thing that we've always known, you go to your faucet, you turn the faucet on, and you know that the water's okay because it has to be, because they have to follow certain standards. And then you find out they're not following them, and their response is, well, we don't know. No, we don't. We don't think it's caused any problems.
Wow. Well, Eddie, it has actually been an hour, so I don't want to keep everybody on a Friday night, but I am just so grateful that you came on here to share your story, to give education on backflow preventers and these cancer cases and the drinking water. And there were a lot of comments. I wasn't able to get to all of them, but there were quite a few that said they were sorry for your loss and they recognized it was
I'd like to
painful.
come back. Let's come back and do this again. And instead of sitting on the backflow preventers, there's so much to talk about, and there's a real lot to learn. And I think most people, if you educate them and you let them know what's going on, they'll pay attention. You know,
Absolutely.
and that's all we can really do at this point is try to educate people.
And there are ways to protect themselves. I mean, you can get, house filtration and water filtration and have your backflow preventers checked, and there are things you can do. But without that knowledge or even thinking that you need to do it, it doesn't happen. So that's why what you're doing is so important, and we can't thank you enough for being a partner with us in this. Even though you've removed yourself from the situation, you're still in the fight, and you're like a local Superman, because as we all know, no superheroes coming, but luckily Apopka's got you, and you're letting them know, hey, this is what you got to watch out for.
You know, it's. Let me just say this before I end this. Apopka is a really good old boy town, and it's so small that, like you mentioned, the death threats. The only reason why I can do what I'm doing, Jeff, is because I left there. I'm up on a cloud. I'm throwing rocks down on them. They can't touch me. I'm way up here. They wish they. You know what they did? They shut down one of my Facebook pages by complaining and stuff, because they want to shut you down. They don't want people to know the truth. And see, they have a real hard problem dealing with you, because they deal with the wild guy that likes to deal with the Apopka mold page, but they dealing with the guy over here on the Apopka cancer cases page who's pretty damn smart, who knows what he's talking about. And I've done my research. I've looked into these things, and the people just need to understand this. I lost my wife. I lost my home. We lost everything. So forgive me for asking questions and expecting you all to do your job. And if I get a little bit jerkish sometimes, well, try to understand I lost my wife. I'm raising my kid by myself. I'm a little bit bitter because I think you killed my wife. You know what I'm saying? So when you have that bad feeling and you think somebody killed your wife, it's kind of hard to be really nice to them all the time. But if I had killed somebody's wife because of negligence I did, I think that I might be I think I'd say, you know what, Eddie, you do what you got to do. We're going to do whatever we have to for you, and so be it, whatever it is. In other words, I'm not wrong about what I'm saying. And it's not even about me anymore. It's about my wife. It's about everybody. It's about doing the right thing and for protecting everybody. So, like I said, I can't bring Sheila back, but we can certainly do a lot to educate the others and make sure they know that what happened to us, because I don't want it to happen to anybody else. But anybody can reach out to me if anybody needs anything. I'd love to hear from you. I'm still single, but I love being single. I'm in charge. I get to do whatever I want. And this is the only part of my house I could find that we could actually do this little spot here. So anyways, I'm teasing. This was great. Thank you so much. And listen, I'm sorry I didn't get to see you all when I was in town a couple of weeks ago. But next time, I promise I will.
Absolutely.
I'm coming back. The flights are only $21 each way from Boston to Orlando. See you soon.
And tell Bailey thank you, and we appreciate his assistance for being a production assistant. And
let's do this.
Our love
let's do this again. I'd really like to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.